Apple denies the claims and is vowing to vigorously fight the lawsuit. Earlier, I spoke to Connecticut Attorney General William Tong, who is one of the co-plaintiffs on that case. Thank you so much for joining us. You and, of course, Attorney General Merrick Garland say that Apple has monopoly power over the smartphone market. But there are, of course, several other companies to choose from. Samsung, LG, Google, they make smartphones too. Can you help us understand why you allege that Apple has this monopoly in this case?
Well, it's obvious to so many people how dominant Apple is. It has 70% of the performance smartphone market by revenue. It has 65% of the smartphone market broadly. It makes more money than any other company in the Fortune 500. Its market cap is $2.5 trillion. Apple is dominant. It's everywhere, not just with iPhones and iPads and the Apple Watch, and now the new goggles that they're selling and CarPlay, but of course iTunes and music and now content and Apple TV. I mean, it's everywhere.
But Apple would, of course, argue there are other choices. People are free to buy any phone that they choose. So how exactly then has Apple violated antitrust law?
Well, nobody is more dominant than Apple in this space. And the way they violated antitrust law is they've abused their monopoly power to shut out competitors, to shut down competitors, and to restrict choice for consumers and developers, and ultimately to increase price on consumers. I mean, I have two iPhones right now, and I have a 13, and it's getting a little long in the tooth. I know that when it's time for me to upgrade, I may have to pay as much as $1,600 in today's prices to get a new phone. Those are monopoly rents that Apple can charge because we're locked into its ecosystem. We can't live without its devices, and we're locked in to Apple and Apple products.
Apple says it's created this ecosystem to make the experience better, to make better products, to increase consumer safety. What's your response to that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with great products. And as I said, I use Apple products. But the key is that Apple is so dominant that it can't use its market position and its power to shut out competitors, to limit access to super apps, for example, to limit access to cloud computing through my iPhone and my iPad, to limit access to pay by touch, and also more messaging functionality. That's what they do to shut down outside competitors and shut down the ability of developers to offer more choices to consumers like me and my family.
If your case here does succeed, what do you think might happen? What would you like to see happen? You mentioned the cost of an iPhone. Could consumers see potentially prices go down?
Yes, we'd love to see prices come down. We think that prices will come down when they open up the ecosystem and make it more available and accessible to people. But we just want Apple to play by the rules, to stop using its tremendous market power to restrict access to what people call the API. That's the application programming interface, otherwise known as sort of the machinery of creating apps and content and devices for the iOS ecosystem. We want them to stop shutting out competitors and developers. We want them to stop charging monopoly rents. Every time we use that pay by touch and use the Apple Wallet, which is the only wallet we can use on our iPhones, they charge 15 basis points on every transaction. They get us coming and going, and that ultimately costs more for consumers and restricts choice and hurts competitors.
We've seen some similar lawsuits, some similar action by the FTC in the U.S. against these big tech companies, Google, Amazon, just to name a couple. Why do you think U.S. regulators are now seemingly a bit more willing to crack down against these big American tech companies?
Because we know that we've seen this movie before, because we know that we had to take action against Microsoft a generation ago, now 24 years ago. And at that time, Apple was in deep trouble and Microsoft was dominant. And if the Department of Justice and 19 states didn't take action against Microsoft at that time, Apple might not be here. The iPod, iTunes may never have gotten off the ground, and there probably wouldn't be a Google or a Meta or a Facebook or an Instagram. But we took action to open up the stranglehold that Microsoft had through Windows and through the Microsoft operating system. And that enabled innovation. It broadened access for developers and customers. And here we are again, right? Apple was once the great innovator and upstart, and in many ways it still is. But they're also so dominant. They're a monopoly behemoth that many of us can't live without. And we have to loosen their reins on this marketplace so that all of us can breathe and have choice and pay lower prices.
Connecticut Attorney General William Tong, a co-plaintiff on this Department of Justice case against Apple. Thank you very much for your perspective on this.
Thank you, Carl.